So a rather hard-hitting speech from the International Relations Minister. What's the reaction been, or what kind of backlash do we expect against the speech?
Well, the other 122 of the 123 members of the International Criminal Court are just starting their speeches here. Each country gets 5 or 10 minutes or so to make a statement to the other countries that are signed up to the court, and we're expecting to hear some pretty strong statements out against what the South African Minister, Nkoana-Mashabane, had to say. Basically, they will say that her ambition to change the way the court works in regards to diplomatic immunity for people that are indicted by the court, like the Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir, that is a matter for judges to decide within the courtrooms and not for the political body to decide. They say that it's an interference of the independence of the court. So we'll have to wait and see. There might be some strong statements, but also in that interview that I did with the minister, she said that the ICC has become a joke on the African continent and that it needs to respect the African nations more, otherwise they will potentially look at what they will do. And I was pretty surprised to see how clearly we can kind of glean from what she was saying that she potentially would be willing to be the person to remove South Africa from the International Criminal Court's jurisdiction.
All right, so Jack, there's a lot of talk then around the ICC being at a crossroads, and we heard you asking the minister that question about, is it a realistic possibility now that South Africa could leave the ICC?
Well, it does potentially look like it. Now, what's important to know about this is if South Africa were to remove its signature from the Rome Statute, which is the founding document of the International Criminal Court, it would it would take a year before the country would leave, and also any commitments that the country, that South Africa, had to the International Criminal Court. So this whole spat with the ICC over the al-Bashir case and issue, that would still remain. They would still be liable for this. And as we heard, many observers here that I've been speaking to have said they're questioning why South Africa is being so hard on this issue, because they could probably paste over the al-Bashir debacle quite quickly. But it's really a showing of a deeper political desire from the South African government to really be at one and be unified with the other countries on the African continent. In the AU framework, we saw the Kenyan minister also say some very hard things. They've obviously got a bit of a different case with their deputy prime minister under trial here at the ICC. So there's some strong statements, but as I said, it does appear that South Africa could be willing to leave the ICC if the points of discussion and the reforms that the government wants aren't discussed or considered or taken seriously.
So then, Jack, that unity that you allude to, if South Africa leaves, will any other countries follow suit?
Well, no other country has ever left the court before, so it's a completely unprecedented path for any country to take. We'd assume that the Kenyans would also follow suit because they are very critical about the case of William Ruto. Basically, the court said that recanted evidence, in 2013, the court said that recanted evidence could be used in trials. But the trial of William and the case of William Ruto, the Kenyan Deputy Vice President, had already started, and the Kenyans say that because that decision came in after his trial starting, that it shouldn't be involved in his case. So they're very strong against the ICC at the moment, and there's some speculation that if they don't get their way, they will send their minister directly to the UN Security Council in New York to remove the signature from the Rome Statute. Again, it would still be a year before they left, and all the prior commitments would still stand. But we could really start to see some pretty tricky times for the International Criminal Court now if things don't change and if they can't come to some resolutions here at this Assembly of States Parties.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. That's our correspondent, Jack Parrock, live from the ICC at The Hague in the Netherlands.